Hey man, yo kakampe. Hey man, yo kakampe.
Hello and welcome back to Conversations in Black. I'm J.R.D, your host. This is a series of conversations produced by the United Black Caucus Political Action Committee. For this new conversations, we are honored, thrilled, and enthused to welcome Miss Annamie Paul, who is the leader of the Green Party of Canada, a trailblazer because she's the first ever Black Canadians to be a leader of a major Canadian federal party. And together we'll be discussing many subjects, but particularly around the economic recovery post-COVID, especially affecting young Canadians and young Black and people of color, and also the housing crisis for young Canadians. So without further ado, let us welcome Miss Paul. Miss Paul, welcome to Conversations in Black, and thank you for accepting our invitation.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm just really looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, perfect. So before we get into the gist of the questions, every time I have with politicians, I always ask, and this will be a two-pronged question. First of all, I mean, you are a lawyer, you worked internationally, you have a Master of Public Affairs from Princeton University. You are what we can call a policy wonk, really involved in the, behind the scene with policy thinking, like the big picture. So why you decided to run or to be involved in the partisan politics? And second of all, why the Green Party? Why not a conservative, a liberal, or NDP? Why you chose the Conservative Party? The Green Party of Canada.
Yeah. Well, I will say, when you were asking the question, I was thinking, boy, I ask myself that question every day. It really is a big commitment. There is no question about it. It changes your life, whether you're elected to lead a party or you're but also an MP or a counselor. Being in the public eye is unlike anything else. I have a family, and certainly it requires a lot of sacrifice. It's something that I think you have to be able to answer the question that you just asked. That's what keeps you going through the days, the reasons why you're doing it. In my case, I came to understand through the many different experiences I've had, professional and educational and otherwise, that a lot of the most impactful things that have ever been accomplished, almost all of them, in fact, have been done collectively. They've been done collectively, and this is a moment where we really need coordinated collective action, and government has a big role to play in that. And so for me, I thought that this could be a way that I could contribute right now at this stage of my life. I wanted to be part of a group, a political party that was committed to that kind of positive collective action. And in choosing a party, it's a great question. I chose a party that felt most aligned with my values, my principles, the policies that I supported. I think the more that you can match up who you are in the rest of your life with your politics and the party that you join, the easier life is. You don't want to be in conflict, internal conflict with yourself. So that's how I came to join the Green Party. It really to me most closely corresponded. And I'm also not afraid to be part of something that is a startup. If I believe in something, I'm willing to roll up my sleeves and invest in it. And that's how I feel about the Green Party. It's really a party for people that want to build something positive together and aren't afraid of getting involved in doing that.
Yes. Well, wonderful. So now with our program, really, we try to get young Black Canadians, or people of color to get involved. And of interest to me when I was doing a bit of research, you were involved with the Canadian Center for Political Leadership, where you were training, women and underrepresented minorities to run for elected office. So I really would like to get your perspectives of why is it important for young, young Canadians in general and young Black, Indigenous or other, people of color Canadians to be involved in politics, in electoral politics. Why you believe it's important to be active either as a militant or, in a political party or in the associative measure, but just to be involved in the political matter of the country. Why is it important, especially for young people?
Yeah. Well, I really hope that everyone has the answer to that question just looking around right now. I think that if anyone was ever asking themselves, was it worth it or why does it matter? They can look around now during the pandemic and see all the reasons that it matters. They can see all the reasons that and all the ways that government is deeply involved in their day-to-day lives. When the pandemic hit, it was the first place that people turned to for support, for protection, for direction through this pandemic. And the decisions that it made about who was going to get benefits, how much those benefits are going to be, where the money was going to be invested, would businesses shut and close, would schools stay open? I mean, all of the decisions that have been taken and continue to be taken, the fingerprints of government is all over that. And so if you want to have an impact on those decisions, if you want to be able to shape those decisions, then you have to be in the room where those decisions are taken. And so for young people in particular, when we see how they've been treated often during this pandemic as second-class citizens, and by that I mean the benefit offered to post-secondary students was significantly lower than the emergency benefit offered to others. We know that the kind of jobs that young people have, those are the jobs that were most deeply affected during the pandemic. We know that young people have been in the most precarious situation during the pandemic, amongst the most. And so imagine if more young people had been in the room when the policies were being developed. Imagine if they had been able to share directly their perspective and experience so that could inform the policy. So the more diverse the representation we have in this country at every level of politics, the more likely it is that we will be able to design policies that really reflect the needs of the people most directly impacted by them. And we increase the chances of success of those policies. So there's every reason as we exit the pandemic for young people to feel like they have a stake. If we're talking about housing, if we're talking about employment, if we're talking about education, all of those things are things that young people really right now are in deep jeopardy of being left behind on. And so they need to show up to vote, to run, to serve if they want to make sure that their voice is heard.
Excellent. And this is a great transition actually to the economic side of our conversations for the recovery. As we've seen really with young Canadians, well, say 16 to 24, like I said, we've seen the level of the unemployment rate sort of equaling what we saw during like the Great Depression. And now they're more involved in precarious employment. And now most of them were also, from the frontline retailers, call centers, all these kind of jobs. And now what is your party's proposal for the recovering process for young Canadians so that they can at least have a decent employment, a living wage, and so that also most of us are delaying even, thinking of even buying a house or even renting or starting a family because we can now just not afford it. So what is the proposal of the Green Party in terms of getting that dignity of employment and wage for young Canadians in this post-pandemic Canada and moving forward?
Yes, and that the answer to that question should be on everyone's mind because young people are the future, not the future. I mean, the young people are here, so it's not just the future, but the future of Canada, the future a success of this project, that we're all involved in, which is this country, is very much dependent upon the answers to the questions that you asked. And as the mother of a 20-year-old and a 17-year-old, these are big preoccupations for me, just at a personal level as well. We have got to take the lessons that we have learned during this period and make sure that we do better going forward. We have to make sure that we complete our social safety net so that everyone, as you said, can live in dignity, so that from the first day of your life to the end, there is dignity and security throughout it. And we can do it. We have everything that it takes to do it. We have the wealth to do it. We have demonstrated throughout the pandemic at the grassroots level that we have the solidarity to do it. People in Canada clearly want to see their neighbors protected and living in security and dignity as well. So for young people, what does this mean? What are some of the elements that it's going to need to include? First, we need to see a guaranteed livable income. The time has come for a guaranteed livable income. We have had more than enough time to establish whether the mix of social programs that we have is an adequate substitute. It is not. People who are working in precarious employment, who are self-employed, all the different scenarios that people are in, and particularly young people, are not sufficiently covered in the programs we have. So a guaranteed livable income would make a big difference. Affordable housing. We have a crisis of affordable housing in this country. We need to massively invest in not-for-profit and co-op housing. We need to incentivize building new rental housing, which is purpose-built and comes with the security that once you're in there, you can stay there in security. We need to bring in new universal programs, universal pharmacare, universal childcare, and of course, universal post-secondary education as well. All of those things combined together help to begin to build the picture of what a secure, dignified life for every young person in Canada looks like, where they have the same opportunities and the same possibilities of a high quality of life as other generations have had.
Mm-hmm. And just to push back here, when you say like affordable, like I heard like, guaranteed livable income, are you suggesting, like concrete any level? Is it like 1,000, 1,500 a month? Is that the basic one? In terms of affordable housing, like, are you suggesting like to cap or to have rent control, or like specifically, if you can just give us more details?
Well, there are many different models for guaranteed livable income, and we use the word very intentionally. More people are more accustomed to universal basic income. The reason we talk about a guaranteed livable income is because that's the key word, livable, right? It's guaranteed and it's livable. What that means is going to be different in different parts of the country. There are still some parts of the country where you can live very comfortably for a couple $1,000s a month. And then there are others where that's not even going to pay for a studio apartment. And so, it's something that is truly livable and is adjusted to correspond to what that means in the various parts of the country. It's not something that's intended to replace social programs. It's something that is intended to supplement them as well. That's really important to emphasize. And what we're saying is that there are very exciting models that have been piloted in other parts of the world. There are some jurisdictions here in Canada that are launching their own pilots like PEI. So let's take a look at them. Let's take a look at what we have learned, and then let's design the federal government along with the provinces a made in Canada guaranteed livable income. So we don't prejudge that process by saying this is how much, et cetera. But what we do say is that there are wonderful models that exist. Certainly one or more of them will fit Canada and our needs. And so let's do that. In terms of affordable housing, we can go deep into that rabbit hole. All to say that if listeners take a look at our website, we have done a lot of work recently on campaigning for affordable housing. And when we do that, we always do it in a very propositional way with very concrete policy recommendations and solutions. And so you'll see them there, and I'll just highlight a couple. One, of course, is that we need to adopt a new formula for what affordable housing means, because the definition of affordable housing now is completely out of step with what people are actually earning. That's just an example of that. And then, yes, there is no question that having security in rental housing is going to be a key element here, so that people, when they go into rental housing, know that they're not going to be rent-evicted or evicted or have the price boosted to the point that they have to leave. People, if they're going to accept that they are going to be renting for their whole lives, and in many parts of the world, people rent very happily for their whole lives, it has to be with the security of knowing this is my home and I can stay here as long as I want to stay here, and I can afford to stay here as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's interesting. And now you guys, because I've seen other parties proposing, even in Quebec, Quebec Solidaire, in terms of sort of like a registry where, they can know how much the previous renter paid, so that, let's say, when you're signing a new lease, right, the increase is reasonable, or at least, you can sort of negotiate the increase. And also in terms of balancing, and that will be a pushback, balancing the interest of the landlords and the renters as well. Is there should they not sometimes to do renovations? So how do you guys strike the balance between the interest of the landlords and those of the renters? I don't know if the question is clear.
No, it is. And we haven't entered into that level of detail per se. And we know, again, some of those things will need to be and can easily be left to the local level of government to design, as long as there is a common understanding, as long as there's baselines. Mm-hmm. Every part of the country is different. We really believe very much in ensuring that communities have agency over these processes, that it's not too centralized, because that's often how you end up with unintended consequences. A rule that you put in place for one part of the country doesn't fit for another part and ends up making things worse. So what we are really supportive of is every level of government working on this issue of ensuring that there's affordable housing. And what we should always be asking ourselves at every level is, okay, given our objective to make sure that everyone is in affordable, secure housing, what should each of us be doing to support that objective? What is the piece that the federal government can do to support it? For instance, incentives for building that housing, subsidies for co-op housing or not-for-profit housing, for instance. What is better left to the provincial government, and what is better left to the municipal government? If the spirit is really the objective and not the politics, then we should all be able to work together across levels of government to achieve the objective without feeling like we have to design every single part of it ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Well, thank you for clarifying that. And not to take too much of your time, for the last questions here is really, if you have any insight, because there's still, when we engage with, young Canadians, and especially what we call the Zoomers, they're really reluctant about politics, really reluctant about electoral politics, and are really engaged on a issue to issue basis, pretty much, of course, climate change and everything. So what insight or word of advice or word of wisdom you have for young Black, Indigenous, or Canadians of colors who may want to get into politics, but say, I don't have a place in politics. It's not really, it's not really for me. They don't get things done, or, it's just too much bureaucratic, too much complicated. With your experience, on the policy side, behind the scenes, in the shadow, and now, in the forefront leading, major federal party, what will be your insight to sort of ease the worries and to let them know that, go ahead and do it, and you can change something?
Yeah, first I would say to those who say that I'm not engaged because it's not worth it or it's too bureaucratic, etc., I would say to them, how's that working out? I mean, how is that work? How's that going? These institutions will only change and only be as strong and democratic and representative of the people that they're there for if people get engaged. There are a lot of people that are actually counting on young people not to get engaged so that they can continue to design policies that really don't have the interests of young people in mind. Mm-hmm. We can see that. We can see that. The fact that young people continue to show up at lower rates during federal elections, that is a calculus that political parties, put into deciding what are the policies I'm going to push. And so I would say that I would say that I understand, I really truly understand why young leaders have chosen to concentrate most of their effort, or many young people in any case, on civil society. Mm-hmm. Our mass mobilization movements around reconciliation, around social and racial equity, around the climate, and I could go on. All of our major mass mobilization movements are led by young people. So it is wrong to say that young people are disengaged. It is wrong to say that young people are apathetic. They have just chosen to divert their energy where they feel that they can have an impact. The key now is to match that on the civil society side with the political side as well, so that the messages that are being transmitted from the streets can be converted into the laws and legislations, et cetera, to make the difference that young people are agitating for. And so from a very personal level and on behalf of our party, my message is, please know that we see you and we value you. We value your leadership. We know that you have that leadership. We are willing to make space for it within our party. We launched a campaign called Time to Run, exactly to attract a lot of new young people to politics. And that if you choose to take this leap, if you choose to get engaged in politics, to make that investment, that there is still the possibility of doing extraordinary things. And this is really a moment that requires that kind of extraordinary policy and politics. And so we need you to be a part of that. We have our climate we've got to be thinking about. We have all of the issues that you raised. We're at a crossroads where we could just set ourselves on a path that we all want to be on, but it really is going to take the engagement and the passion and intellect and leadership of young people to help us get there. So I'm here. Reach out anytime to me and our party. And I would say, even if it's not our party that excites you, find a way to make sure that you contribute at this moment, because we really need you to do that.
All right, excellent. Well, Ms. Paul, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for taking time to sit down with us to have this conversation. Guys, you can go ahead and visit her website, annamepaul.ca, the Green Party of Canada's website. You can look at the platform. For those of you young Canadians out there from our platform or elsewhere, you can take a look at the Time to Run campaign as well. And just form your opinion. And if you're excited about the Green Party, join the movement. And so, Ms. Paul, thank you. That's it for us. And we'll see you for another conversations with another politician. And until then, stay engaged, stay involved, and let's make our country more inclusive, a more diverse, and more better place to live. Thank you, and bye-bye.
Hey man, yo kakampe. walk and pick.